Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Monday meeting from March the 19th. I'd like to ask everybody in the audience that can to stand as we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any agenda additions, deletions, or amendments? Hearing none, will anybody sign up for citizen participation? As I invite you to the table, if you would, for the folks at home, identify yourself with your name and address, and keep your comments to 3 or 4 minutes. I'd appreciate it. First speaker is Aaron Markovich. Welcome, sir. And he'll be followed by Elvita Dixon. Welcome.
Good evening. Aaron Markovich. I'm here representing Anacostia Trails Heritage Area, Maryland Milestones. You are fortunate enough to be part of our Heritage Area program, and every year I travel around and visit all the municipalities that are part of that Heritage Area program. We're very thankful for your continued support and participation. If you don't know, or if you don't remember maybe, the city did receive over $9,000 to help renovate the exhibits at the stables. So the city has received funding from our program. We hope we continue to get grant applications from the city for things like art, history, natural areas, even special events. I've put a brochure at each of your places. This is our newest brochure that's going out into all the local hotels and motels and restaurants and such. And we did make sure to include things like Bowie Fest in there and some of the Bowie locations. This is the first time we've started to include the communities that have been added into the program. Our biggest news is that our program, the 13 heritage areas of the state of Maryland have increased their funding from $3 million to $6 million. And as a result, we're able to give away more funding. So if the city of Bowie different departments are looking for funding for some of their projects, they should definitely let me know. We'll continue to offer sponsorships. We'll continue to offer technical assistance. We work with the Department of Planning. We work with the museum folks as well. We continue to hold these different types of workshops and programs, and we hope to continue. If any of you all have questions, or really anybody in the community has questions, then maybe they represent a nonprofit and we'd like to get them some information. The one request that we do have for the council is that we don't have a regular participant at our governing board meetings, which are held on a quarterly basis. We are looking for somebody. Generally, it is a council member. It can be a staff member that is appointed to that. And in the sort of third slot, we will take somebody from the community that is appointed by the council that has the responsibility to report back to the council. It's sort of the link between that governing board of our organization and you all. So that's why it tends to be a council member from many of the other communities. I know we're dealing with the largest city in Prince George's County, so it may work a little bit different than, say, a Berwyn Heights or something. But that's generally how we like to have that to happen. I did want to point out that we recently have published a book on the history of U.S. Route 1. We're going to leave a copy over here with the planning staff for the city. Folks can go on our website if they're looking for more of that information. And the final thing I wanted to mention is that this Saturday at South Bowie Library will be a Passport to History program. So if anybody out there has kids that are looking for an activity for the weekend, we encourage them to come out and learn all about Prince George's County history. It's being put on by the library system. So I'm able to answer any questions if you have them about our program. Like I said, we work pretty closely with the staff, but this is always your opportunity to ask any questions of me.
Okay, questions or guests? Well, thank you, sir. We will follow
enough.
up. Thank you for
much.
what you do. Appreciate that. Elvita Dixon, the chair of our diversity committee. Good to see you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, council members, and members of the community. Again, my name is Elvita Dixon, and I'm here on behalf of the Diversity Committee of the City of Bowie. And each month, the Diversity Committee recognizes the contributions of various groups to foster an appreciation of diversity in our Heritage Month presentations. The month of March recognizes Women's History Month and also St. Patrick's Day. The first information that I'm going to talk about was put together by one of the Diversity Committee members who has been a longstanding member, but she was not able to be here tonight, so I'm presenting that on her behalf. Her name is Jenny Gilbo, and she put together some information of some famous women. Many of you may be familiar with 3 of these women who were recognized in the movie Hidden Figures, and they detail contributions of mathematicians and physicists and aerospace engineers. The contributions of Dorothy Vaughan, who was a mathematician and also worked with computers, Katherine Johnson, a physicist and mathematician, and Mary Jackson was also an aerospace engineer. And these women contributed significantly in the early space race, and they worked at the National Aeronautics, and Space Administration, also known as NASA, in Hampton, Virginia. And I have to say that's also where I grew up. And Dorothy Vaughan worked in the West Area's Computers Unit as a supervisor, and she specialized calculations for flight paths, the Scout Project, and Fortran computer programming. Katherine Johnson was the woman who was the genius, the mathematical genius in the movie, and she graduated from high school at age 14, and she also worked at NASA as an aerospace technologist, calculating the trajectory for the first American in space, Alan Shepard. And John Glenn asked for her by name and refused to fly unless she verified the calculations for his historic orbit around the Earth. And I'm proud to say that the 3rd woman that was represented in the film, Mary Jackson, was actually a family friend. Now, I did not know at the time that she was this great mathematical genius and aerospace engineer, but one thing I knew about Mary Jackson was she was a go-to person. If you wanted anything done, you went to Mary Jackson. And when Mary Jackson asked for something, you did not tell her no. Also, I wanted to highlight just some other famous women. And Clara Barton, these women are famous women from the state of Maryland. Clara Barton was a Civil War nurse, and she was also the founder of the American Red Cross. And she spent the last 15 years of her life in Glen Echo, Maryland, which also served as the Red Cross headquarters. Mary Garrett was a philanthropist and champion of women's education, and she contributed to the endowment to establish the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. And St. Elizabeth Ann Seton was the first native-born American to be canonized by the Roman Catholic Church. Henrietta Sold was an educator and social activist from Baltimore who was the founder and first president of Hadassah, the Women's Zionist Organization of America, and created the Youth Aliyah program, which saved many thousands of Jewish children from concentration camps. Many of you are probably already familiar with Harriet Tubman, who was very famous for freeing slaves and also part of the Underground Railroad. However, many people may not know that she was also a scout, a spy, and a nurse for the Union Army. And Bowie has a famous woman that I would like to recognize, and most of you are familiar with her, and that's Kathy Lee Gifford, who actually grew up here and attended Bowie High School. And Kathy Lee is on Hoda and Kathy Lee on the Today Show. For St. Patrick's Day, which we just celebrated on March 17th, which is supposedly the death of St. Patrick, I wanted you all to know that it has been reported that St. Patrick's Day is the most celebrated national festival or holiday around the world. It is celebrated in many, many countries around the world. However, many of you may not know that St. Patrick was not actually Irish. He was actually British. However, St. Patrick's Day has been known, it's now known as a day where we celebrate everything Irish. And we have, I have some famous Irish persons that I want to recognize. Most of you are familiar with one was probably the most famous to us all, is former President John F. Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. However, we also have Mary Robinson. I don't know if she's any relation to Fred
Former Prime
Robinson.
Minister.
She's the former president of Ireland, but we have here as Bowie's own most famous Irishman, our mayor, Fred Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. M.L. Smith, and Ms. Smith will be followed by Fiona Moody. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Normally when I'm here, it's because I'm upset or angry. So I thought tonight I would come in and say, I am happy. Number one, democracy lives in our little corner of America, thank God. And I want to compliment the city for paying attention to the problems we had with the recall election and for the actual vote for the new council member. You sent out 2 separate notices. The election was run by competent, courteous people. It went very smoothly, so thank you for listening. Keep it up.
Thank you, ma'am. Fiona Moody, and she'll be followed by Jesse Blunt. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening. Just over a year ago, a group of Bowie citizens, many of whom are here this evening from every background, Republican and Democrat, young and old, white and black, joined together. We were dissatisfied with our representation, and we had one mission: to hold our elected officials accountable. Over the last year, many people, including those in this room, said that we couldn't do it, and at times even we got extremely discouraged. But with grit, determination, and hard work, after a year, we pulled it off. I want to express my sincere appreciation for every single person who joined us on that journey. It was not easy, and we made history in the state of Maryland. Over 3,000 people signed the recall petition, and more than 1,000 people joined with us and voted with us in this past election. And I hope that each and every one of you recognize how momentous that accomplishment is, whether or not you supported us. Along the way, I hope that you keep in mind that we, the people, are responsible for this, and it's not the first time that it happened, and it won't necessarily be the last. So again, thank you to everybody at home. Thank you to everyone here who came out and voted, who signed the recall, who put a sign in their yard, who walked and knocked on doors and joined with us in this absolutely historic effort that Bowie has ever seen and hasn't been seen before in the state of Maryland. So I just want to applaud everybody for their involvement and congratulate Mr. Woolfley on his win. We will hold him to the same standards as we hold every one of you to. And so thank you very much for your time and effort, and thank you to you guys for helping us out. Good evening.
Thank you, ma'am. Jesse Blunt? Jesse Blunt? Excuse me, before you start, Ms. Hernandez has the chairman found the parking, please. Okay. Thank you. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson. My name is Jessie Blunt, and I recently became a resident of Bowie about 2 years. Prior to that, I lived in Bowie for like about 4 years. So I'm here representing the citizens, the senior citizens of Bowie, because I reside right across the street at Pin Oak Village Apartments. I've had several of the constituents and several of the council people come in soliciting and talking about the necessary to vote, and I'm all about that. I've been, like I said, everywhere I've lived, I believe in voting. However, I'm in a situation where I know I've spoke up for the citizens numerous times, and when the floor is open for them to speak up for themselves, a lot of them don't speak up. But I'm speaking up on behalf of all of us in Bowie and other surrounding counties. I'm affected by theft in the building. I've had to call in Bowie Police several times. Sometimes it's petty, sometimes to me it's serious. And we have asked that we at least that they give some attention to, the management company give some attention to doing a simple thing as getting cameras or something so we could validate and find out who's doing the theft, or we can feel safe in some kind of capacity. Because, citizens can't, once you become a certain age, you can't protect yourself. So you're looking for the people that you vote in to help you, as well as the management company who's taking your rent and holding you accountable to adhere to your and be compliant with your lease. So all I'm asking is that I've gone to Bowie Police. They have documented the calls, but even they have said on Saturday morning, 3:30 in the morning, someone's outside this past week, juggling my door and stomping and bumping around my door. I was awakened. Of course, I called my sister because I was a little afraid to open the door this time. This happened to me last year as well. And so I'm just to the point where I know something can be done and something has to be done. So I'm actually here to get some ideas, to bounce off and let my voice be heard, because I am concerned. And it's the police, they've assured me without cameras, without some way to prove, what facts can you really investigate? So, I just need to get some answers and get some references, because I will take this as far as I have to. That's just where I'm at right now.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
Have you left your information with the clerk?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
Pardon me?
If
Have
could
you
leave
left your information with
Other
the
than
clerk?
what I've written on those sheets right there, no.
Oh, could you do that, please?
Yes, I will do
Okay,
that.
because we need to follow up on it.
Okay, I appreciate that. I was told that a Mr. Jarrett from Councilman Todd Turner's office was going to reach out to me, but I've had no follow-up thus far.
We'll check into it for you. If you can give your material, Mrs. Hernandez. Okay. And I have a request from somebody later up on the interview tonight. That's Mr. Rao. Mr. Rao, did you want to speak now? Did you say you wanted to speak now? Oh, okay. All right. All right. Wait a minute.
Is it appropriate that I do or not?
If you have something. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, come on.
Good evening. Hi, Andrew Rabb with St. John Properties. Based on the fact that we just had the election, I think, what's the date of that? The 12th, and today's like a week later, apparently. We were thinking of maybe we give a delay for tonight's hearing on our matter for a couple weeks to the next regularly scheduled planning or council meeting. I forget what that date is. It's something like the 3rd of April? 2nd of April. We'd be willing to do that to give people time to get up to speed on it. But I would like to point out that the meeting, the retail element that we're going to be discussing, which we should be discussing tonight, that was originally noticed to the public on February 13th. It was sent out by letter. It was advertised on the website. It was in the Bowie Blade. I imagine it was on various Twitter feeds and all the rest of it. So in that letter, it basically said there were going to be 3 dates. It was a stakeholders meeting on the 27th of February. And then after that meeting, it was also memorialized. The notes of the stakeholders were sent out to it was on the city website and to all the people that were involved. In that meeting, from recollection, all err on the side of saying there were more people there. So I'm going to say there was 20 people there that were speaking, say, in opposition of the retail project. The Bowie Advisory Planning Board was last Wednesday night. And I had about 6 consultants there, and there was one person from the general public that showed up. Again, noticed to everybody. So everybody can't say they didn't know that meeting was coming up. It was noticed, and we had one person show up to the appropriate venue to discuss, I think, the merits of how the plan looked, and that's at the Bowie Advisory Planning Board. So I just want to state this just for the record before I wrap up. So all these things were noticed, but we've been here a long time. I think we've been working on this for 7 years. I've mentioned this before. I worked in Europe for 12 years, and I was always stunned that Dwight Eisenhower invaded Normandy on June 6, 44, pulled the flags down in Berlin 11 months later. I haven't pulled a building permit in 7 years. So I ended World War II in 11 months, and I've been working on this for 7 years. But in the spirit of cooperation, we'll take a continuance until the next meeting on the 2nd, if that's okay with the council.
Yes, I would hope that we would move it back past the 2nd. I don't think there's enough time, and I was going to ask a question, because there was only 13 people that showed up on the 27th of February for the stakeholders meeting, and I was trying to figure out, well, why only 13 people? Because I know that the residents over in District 2 were very adamant, and they were looking at and they've been on top of the Melford issue, so there was a disconnect for me. And then I found out after I got some inquiries, the 27th was also the day that they were having the candidates forum for District 2. So the residents for District 2 could not be in two places at the same time. Plus, as a council member, I was looking at what was happening on the television, what was transpiring for the candidates forum on District 2. And that was my focus, and I'm pretty sure if that was my focus, and they live in District 2, I don't live in District 2, right, but I am a council member that represents all the districts, I'm pretty sure it should have been their focus as well. So, and I'm gonna this is just my own personal prerogative I'm asking the mayor, because the mayor knows that I will be out of town on April the 2nd, so I will not be able to make that particular meeting. And I don't think we have enough time in order to have a stakeholders meeting. I think there needs to be a stakeholders meeting before we actually bring this to the council.
Well, one question I have, we've had the stakeholders meeting, and we've had the Bowie Advisory Planning Board rendered its decision last Wednesday. So we have a bouncing baby stakeholder, or a Bowie Advisory Planning Board resolution or adoption or recommendation. It's already occurred. And under the same concept you're talking about, why did one person show up last Wednesday? You can't say that there was an election that night or a debate. So
I didn't know about the last week.
But for the record, I'm told that through the media or the way the city advertises these things, it was clear. In fact, it was clear in the original letter on the 13th that the Bowie Advisory Planning Board was going to be March 14th. So they're pumping out that date, March 14th, and one person shows up. So now you're saying that we've held the hearing, that even 2 more weeks from now?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, I hear exactly what you're saying, but I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the meeting on the 27th of February should never have been scheduled on the 27th of February because there was something going on in the city that affected that particular district and those residents.
But understanding, in all fairness to him, that meeting was scheduled before the other one was. So I understand where you're coming from.
Well,
and that's why
yeah.
I'm fine with doing it. All right, Mr. Garner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Rao, for coming out this evening. I know the council just was asked to possibly delay this. However, I know tonight we're going to be swearing in the new District 2 council member. I would suggest that we do that and then hear from that new council member and then take it from there. That's what my thoughts, if we're going to move forward or not. Because if we can take our motion on it, then we could, but I'd like to hear from that newly sworn in council member of the district.
I don't have any objection to that. I'm sure the council member elect would be fine with that. Okay, here another thing then, as soon as we get him sworn in, we'll get a consensus and we'll set another date. Okay, thank you. That's all I have signed up for public or citizen participation. Now, if the chair of the election committee, Yolanda Jones. Welcome, ma'am. If you want to come up and give us a report of your activity. Welcome, and thank you for you heard some kind words. Maybe you were still looking for a party place, but some people were making some very kind remarks about the way the election went off this year. Thank you.
Good evening, and I apologize for my tardiness. I'm going to read a memorandum that is addressed to the City Council. It's from the Board of Supervisors of Elections of the City of Bowie, and this is in regards to the 2018 District 2 special election results. We, the undersigned Board of Supervisors of Elections, do hereby certify that the attached is a true and actual account for the District 2 special election of the City of Bowie, Maryland, on Monday, March 12, 2018. We therefore declare the following shall be the winner of this election. Councilmember Dufour Woolfley, District 2, number of cast votes, 1,323. A total of 2,126 cast their votes at the polls, and 108 persons voted absentee, making a total of 2,234 votes casted in the March 12, 2018 City of Bowie District 2 special election. There are currently 10,534 voters registered on the county and city books, which makes a total of 21.21% of the registered voters casting their votes in the 2018 District 2 special election. It is undersigned by myself, Yolanda Jones, Lou DeSordio, Susan Curley, and Al Curley, all board members, and it was attested by the city clerk, Wilda Hernandez. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So in short, you are certifying the results of the election, and we have a new council member.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions, comments for the chair? Thank you.
Thank
At this
you.
point, I would like to invite Councilmember-elect to join me at the podium here, and council to join. Relatively painless. We haven't lost anybody in weeks. All right. I'm pleased and proud to welcome you aboard, and I'm going to ask you if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. We'll swear you in. I, after I say I, if you would follow the name. I
I, Dufour Woolfley,
do swear or affirm
do swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland,
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of
execute the office of
District 2 Council Member of the City of Bowie,
District 2 Council Member of the City of Bowie,
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
Congratulations, sir. That's your dad. Stalwart soldier. Congratulations. All right, we get some pictures from you? She's full of us. I didn't see her putting film in.
That's it.
Okay, great, thank you.
You want to make a couple comments?
Yeah, I'll wait till I'm up.
Okay. Well, have your seat.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
few moments to,
I'll take my allotted 45 minutes and we'll just kind of go from there. I appreciate it.
not a good way to start.
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you for allowing me to make a few brief comments. I'd like to begin by thanking my wife and my family for all their love and support through this entire process. It has been greatly appreciated. Even if it's not evident, I truly have benefited and I greatly appreciate it. It's not easy being the wife or a child of a councilman, and it's all more difficult and demanding to engage in a campaign. And I'm most grateful to the sacrifices that you have all made on my behalf. And in so doing, you're doing it for the community as well, although there seldom seems to be any recognition of it. But it is very much appreciated by me, and I'm certain by the rest of the community. On behalf of the entire community, I'd also like to thank all of the candidates that ran in the special election. You have given much of yourselves in your effort. While I would certainly appreciate running without opposition, it's clear that the citizens are better served by having a choice. It makes it clear what the will of the people truly is. So thank you all for being there. Thank you for participating. And there was a lot of time, energy, and effort put into this by a lot of candidates and their teams and their support network. So thank you all very much. I'd also like to, of course, thank the people that voted for me and those that supported me. You showed up en masse at the polls when it was a bit chilly on that election day. There was a really good turnout when the opportunity to pull a lever was just one single lever to pull. So it was great to see the participation from the entire community for a single lever pull. Greatly appreciate that. I want to thank all the volunteers that helped with the signs, the letters, the lit dropping, the strategy sessions, the funding, the phone calls, and so much more. Truly, there are too many people that helped to try and recite all of them, but truly this is your victory as much or more so than mine. So I want to thank you all very much for that. I do want to take a moment and call out one special collection of citizens, the Bowie Recall Group. In your historic effort, you marshaled the pent-up, frustrated voices of a city, and you delivered change. One cannot overstate the level of effort it took to bring this to fruition, or the significance that it will have, the impact on the city. Over the years, an active, engaged citizenry built and formed this city. It was they that made Bowie what it is today, and it is delightful to see the level of participation, engagement in the process to show that that has not died and that carries on today in our modern world when people are too busy for too many things that they can't get too engaged in their community. It was nice to see that people really did turn out. I want to thank everybody for their service and everybody that made it possible, and I do appreciate it, and I look forward to working with everybody here on the council, and thank you all very much.
Well said. Well said, and if that's the way you count to 45 minutes, I'll be pleased forever. Before we go into the next thing, might as well clear off this other item of business that just came up, and that is the applicant for the item that's now on the Retail Village at Melford has offered to pull this off for 2 weeks to give you time to get your feet from underneath of you. It seems like a pretty fair gesture to me. Anybody have an objection to that? Do you have an objection to that?
No, I appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity. I think this is an example of what we need to be doing. I'm here in large part because citizens didn't feel that they had an appropriate voice and opportunity, and whether the opportunity was there technically agreed. I'm sure that the appropriate level of notification was given, and it was unfortunate that the circumstances surrounding the election ended up with the forum for candidates ending up being on the same day. I know that this was difficult for a number of people because I had a number of people who reached out to me and expressed their frustration because they had intended to attend the opportunity, the presentation that you guys were making. But they felt they needed to be at the forum for the stakeholders, for the candidates for the election. So I think that's great. I think this is a first step in trying to establish some faith and transparency in the process. And it is indeed greatly appreciated because I know it's no expense, no small expense for you in terms of time, and I'm sure some modicum of frustration as well. But I do appreciate you making that effort, and I appreciate that for the, as a council member as well. And to encourage anybody that has an interest to come out whenever we end up with this stakeholders meeting, so that we can ensure that everybody feels comfortable in a process. There may or may not be any changes that come of it, but the important part is that everybody has an opportunity to speak their minds and to feel that they are engaged. It's that level of transparency that really puts a lot of confidence. It's the foundation and the trust that the city needs to have in its processes. So thank you very much.
Okay, is there any objection? All right, if hearing no objection, we'll reschedule that meeting for either April 2. We will announce when that'll be, probably April 2. Okay, so that'll be deleted from the menu meeting. One last comment, one brief last comment.
Yeah.
Because your council's sitting there and this meter's running.
Yeah, welcome. One of the issues we have, I just heard the word stakeholders. We've already had the stakeholders hearing, and I know that it was the scheduling issue. But notwithstanding, they still advertised and fully memorialized what came out on that. It is on videotape. I've watched it 2 or 3 times after the fact. So anybody that wasn't there that night, I mean, I would have loved to have gone to the candidates forum, to be honest with you. So we all had to pick. But the stakeholders is on video and staff memorialized it, but that doesn't change the fact that they had the Bowie Advisory Planning Board last Wednesday. And in 2013, and this is the often recited document, it's the annexation agreement to the covenants. What it said was, and what's important is, and it's a civil agreement between the 2 parties, is that we would follow Bowie procedures. So the Bowie procedure is you have a stakeholder meeting, which we did, check the box. You have a Bowie Advisory Planning Board meeting, which you did, we checked the box, and you come to council. By going through anything other than taking a delay on tonight's vote, which I think we said the right thing and asked for 2 more weeks. Again, you can watch the video, you can read all the reports, you can have your sidebar meetings, but we would be deviating from the Bowie, this is what we signed up for in 2013, 5 years ago. So I would strongly ask to keep the meeting set on the 2nd. I have 4 consultants out there. 1 came from Leesburg, so the clock is spinning as we speak. So we've kind of done everything we're supposed to do by no fault of our own. And I'm not frustrated, but I would like to stick to the 2nd as the contract says, even though we're given another 2-week delay.
Okay.
I think that's a fair way to move it forward.
Thank you, and thank you for the offer of acceptance of the delay or requesting the delay. So we will get back to you. Okay, so item B on the new business has been deleted, and anybody that's here to speak to that, you can stay for the rest of the meeting if you like, or you can go do something. All right, city boards and committees, Mr. Garner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move for the appointment or the reappointment of Katie Vandermeer to the Green Team Executive Committee.
Oh, welcome. Council. Join us up right here, please.
Oh, thank you. Second by Councilmember Trout.
All right, stand right here, it's fine. All right, you've seen this go forward earlier. I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand, and after I say aye, if you would follow with your name and follow through. Aye. Your name?
Catherine Vandermeer.
Do swear or affirm
Do swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland,
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland.
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the
Constitution and laws thereof, to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of
execute the office
regular
of
member of the Green Team Executive Committee,
a regular member of the Green Team Executive
according to
Committee,
the Constitution and laws of the state.
according to the Constitution of the United States.
That's good. Thank you, Nan. Katie, Pauline, thank you.
Very much.
And I'll give you our typical advice. We appreciate the beginning of your 14-year assignment. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, city manager's report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and residents of Bowie. The city staff is focusing on two things right now. We're focusing on getting the final proposed budget ready for presentation next month, and we have crews preparing for what hopefully will be the last storm of this winter coming up in the next couple of days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, you have consent agendas, item A through E. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved and second by Mr. Marcos. Questions on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 6-0. Item next is Centennial Art Sculpture, eligible for action. Welcome, sir. And if you want to introduce anybody that's with you tonight.
My name is Matt Reno. I'm with the Department of Community Services. As you are aware, in 2013, the City Council approved a public arts master plan that's funded through the Capital Improvement Program. So tonight we're going to talk to you a little bit about the Centennial Art Sculpture, which is going to be installed next to the pond behind City Hall here. This particular project began in 2016. An RFP was released to the.
Some of the people can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need to pull this up. So in 2016, the city released an RFP for the public art sculpture project, the Centennial Art Sculpture. We had 5 respondents. It was a unanimous decision by the Arts Committee, the Centennial Committee, and the Arts, what was it? The last one was the Arts Selection Committee to select Charles Bergen Studios as the artist to prepare the sculpture. The sculpture basically is going to reflect Bowie's history, some community, as well as it would complement the modern theme of City Hall, as well as the architecture of the pond behind us here. So since 2018, or about the last 18 months or so, the artist, Charles Bergen, has spent some time touring the streets of Bowie, consulting with staff at the Historic Properties Division, gaining a good bit of history about Bowie in general. So tonight, our hope is that he will present to you his concept design for this public art sculpture. At the end of the presentation, we'd be happy to answer any questions or comments from council. At this point, Charles, there you are, right there. Here's your pointer.
Great, so this is forward.
That is forward.
Great, thanks. Hello, and thank you for having me, Mr. Mayor. Citizens of Bowie, just want to go ahead here, this is our team here. My studio, I'm from Washington, D.C. Mara Chikaski is an urban historian in Washington who we work with a lot. He's helped a lot of our projects. Here's one of our first projects down here. I'll show you. Rio Velasco is from the Philippines and is a young architect who's been working on this project. Aaron Rogers is an intern architect also working on the project, and Stephanie Reyes is a graphic designer. And additionally, the City of Bowie staff has been really incredibly helpful. Often on these projects, I'm sort of left out to fend for myself. The first time I came here was for a 20-minute meeting for what I thought was a 20-minute meeting with Annette Esther held, and it turned out to be a 2.5-hour tour of the city, where we toured the entire city, and it was dark by the time I left, and it really helped me understand the city and generate the first ideas. The material that I'm going to be using is an aluminum sheet, structural aluminum sheet. It's 6601.
Mr. Bergen, I think if you look this way, the cameras can pick you up so the folks at home can see.
Oh, there's a camera up there? Okay. So this is the metal work, which you see there, and you can see it's a 1/4-inch aluminum, and it's water jet cut. So it's cut with a 60 or 70,000 PSI jet of water and grit. So think of liquid sandpaper.
That's not two council members on that thing.
They're two dinosaurs. This piece is actually down near the U.S. Capitol building project. If I put it there, it's going to fall.
Well, that explains a lot.
Yes, and so they're chasing each other, and it could be lunch, it could be love, it could just be a vote, or it could be politics. But anyway, I don't know if this read. Oh, here we are. So the idea on this project was that it had to use the letter of the street there. So this is F Street, and a Falcarius was a dinosaur, and the Capitalosaurus was a sort of nasty Tyrannosaurus type piece. Anyway, I won't go into much detail. This is another project in Washington, D.C., where, again, this is a similar sort of material. These are big scarlet oak leaves and acorns and birds that are relevant to the district. This is the Rhode Island Trolley Trail, which is, again, a water jet piece. So if you look at the red metal, you can see this is a layer of metal, and then behind it there's a yellow panel piece. Your piece won't have that piece behind it because I wanted to let people look out towards the park, but you can see these under construction there. This is a big project here in Washington, D.C., which tells the history of the River Terrace community, which is off of Benning Road there, and it from 10,000 years ago to the present. And why I'm showing this project is to show you what the possibilities are of this material, that you know, things like down here, the home rule, you know, the I want to vote. Unfortunately, the profile has changed. Everything is a little oblong here. These should be circular, but you can see things like this work pretty well, and sort of cutouts. This is based on an old photograph of teams that played down on the mall, and the Washington Monument is there, and this is a bird. Whereas some of these things that are more sort of like photographs or paintings don't seem to work so well in this material. Something like this works, and this sort of explains why some of the images are the way they are. This is a project I'm proposing for the British D-Day Memorial, which is in Normandy, France. So this is the signage to Gold Beach, which tells the story of what happened there at Gold Beach. And so these are sort of projects we've been working on. Initially, the project was located up here near the road, and it was much taller. It was 10 feet tall, so that it could be seen by people driving along and also passengers. And also people jogging along the trail. We then, once I was selected, we moved it down to here, to much closer to this inner walkway or inner trail. And you can see where it is in relationship to the City Hall. And this shows the initial, how large it was here. This is Excalibur Road here, and then this is the sign here. It was just a little crowded there. That's a 6 foot tall person next to it. You can see it was quite large. So this was the original concept, which I drew up, I don't know, maybe a week after meeting Annette. And what was so neat about her description of the city was it was almost like it was a New England town with a town green. And so, as I'm a former architect, you need to read this square piece in the middle. Again, it's been distorted a bit by the projector, but as a plan. So the church isn't upside down and these buildings aren't on their side. It's buildings around a square. And so this is the past panel, which tells the history of the community. These furrows in the soil represent the agricultural past and fields. This is the Bel Air Mansion, McNair's Barn, which we took out because it turned out it was outside the city limits. Church of the Sacred Heart, which I thought was a wonderful building, and then the Bel Air stables. Here's Old Bowie, Huntington City, and then up here was the station. And so the project was originally designed to be read from both sides, which is why the letters appear to be backwards, because we wanted both the scale of the street as well as the cars and the pedestrians. When we moved it down to further down, that was no longer necessary. We also wanted to have appropriate ADA access so that we could, so we really just have it viewable from one side. We didn't want to get in trouble with the feds. And so here shows the system. These are these 4 by 4 tube steel columns. And then you have these metal panels. These are 5x5 metal panels in the middle, the sort of town square theme running through, and then these rectangular scenes, top and bottom. And so these are the panels. It's a little light there for them, but how we've developed them. But anyway, here is the Huntington City down here with the Oddfellows Hall and an early school and some school children. And then a number of the buildings here, the churches here on the side, the old wonderful city racetrack building there is up the top. We've got the Bel Air Mansion here, the Bel Air Stables. And so these are the sort of elements that we have. And I have bigger images so that we can go through it. With the present panel, we use the city racetrack as a sort of anchoring symbol, and we use the Centennial celebration logo as part of it. We have the various city agencies, the police and the seniors here. We also wanted to celebrate, I was given a whole host of things to, here I just had 4 elements here, and here I was given, I don't know, 20 almost to squeeze in. So we worked with a number of different images here. The city hall is here. There's some firefighters here. These are all the sports that the students play, things of this nature. And I'm just going to go on through the larger images in a moment because it's hard for you to see that, I think. This is the future panel, and we'll go on through here. So this is Bowie Station. Here's the early 1913 and the train coming in. This is the station building that you all recognize. This is the caboose that you all would recognize. So that's a water jet. So what you see is solid panels. This will be solid, and then this will be gap, an air there, gap there. So the same sort of system that you have here with the solid and the void. So let me just do that. Here's the central panel. Again, remember, it should be more square. Just unfortunately, with this projector, it seems to have distorted it. But you have the, oops, sorry, there we go, that looks better. There we have the church, the Bel Air Mansion, the racetrack building here. There's a couple of horses here as bookends, and you can't really see it. I don't know if you can see it, but this is as if you're really standing on that street, and that drove me on that street where people used to line up and block traffic to watch the races. And here's a race in progress here. Then down the bottom of the past images, there's a car here from the 20s, like something out of the Untouchables, and there's an older Victorian home here, the Oddfellows Hall, a school building with the kids playing, and then a large sort of cluster of kids based on an actual photograph that Pam Williams had researched for me. Here, this is, being a former architect, the whole row of houses that were built as the Levitt example really appealed to me. This is going to change somewhat. You know, these are the house types that were built. We're also going to provide images of modern townhomes and other homes so that it's not just this initial development there in Bowie. Here's the central panel. And so on the top here is the bridge that the horses go across in order to go to the racetrack. Here is that wonderful sculpture of horses that you have there. This is the Bowie Performing Arts Building logo, the window panes, the seniors transportation, the Bowie City Hall, which is a wonderful building, some firemen and their hose sort of plays out of the geometry there, the piece, and then here all the different sports that the kids play, and there we squeezed a little logo from the city in there, the wonderful horseshoe piece there, the older Performing Arts Center, the outdoor stage, and then police car here, and then most importantly the Veterans Memorial and the park there, which is a beautiful, beautiful building, and that also took me to. Down the bottom is the panel which is green Bowie, and it's really 3 parts. There's farmer's market, and we're going to correct the apostrophe there. My high school English teacher wouldn't be pleased, but here's this wonderful alley of trees that you have here. So you see the trees will be solid, and then these little pieces will be open. And then this is this wonderful topiary that you have on the hill here, the Bowie topiary. So we sort of blended that together into a combination. And this is a more finished design, and all of them will get developed to this point before they're cut. This is the future top panel, and again, this will be developed considerably, but this is the new performing arts, the outdoor stage that you have under construction or in design. And then there's a large crowd here behind with these little figures, and then a series of different groups. And it's quite a challenge to do facial features in water jet, which is why we were show you those other images, but we're going to do our best with that one and develop that. Next one. Here's the future middle panel, and it has the city seal here, but with larger flags in the middle, and the importance of education here in the city, which sort of leads to the world. We have technology up here, or at least technology as we know it today, the cloud and smartphones and computers and all sorts of things here. Down below, the sustainable technology with the solar panels and the wind mills. And then here's a slightly mad scientist here in the lab working on DNA elements and the medical professions, and those of you who took organic chemistry in college will remember these models. I always felt for my roommates during that stage. And there was a suggestion at the meeting in February that we do a more detailed design to show you how the city logo would appear in the metal. And it's going to be one color, and so the stripes, one stripe will be solid, one stripe will be void, and it'll alternate that way. The Maryland flag is a real challenge because you don't want the metal bits to drop out, but we'll do a pattern, and it's also flapping. Here are your important elements here. I'd like to get some more detail with the locomotive, so we'll work on that. The Bel Air Mansion is here, 1916, the Unity, and then the initial racetrack elements. So you can see how something which is for paper or for indoors, it's not surface like this wonderful piece is here above the mayor. It's solid and void on that piece. Here's I guess the final part of the future panel, which is kids playing in this wonderful sort of playground and a long spiral slide, and parents here watching, and kids learning how to ride their bikes, and all sorts of fun stuff outdoors. So that's what we have for you, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay. We may have some questions on that.
Mayor, Council, we'd be happy to take any
Do you have any
questions
of
or
your
comments.
committee or staff people you want to,
I'm sorry?
any of the committee or anything you want to speak?
We do. We have one committee member with us here today. Oh, two, I'm sorry.
Everybody's pointing at somebody else. It's a good committee.
I'm sorry. What?
It'd be nice to get somebody from the committee to come up with their formal recommendation.
We fully support, we had a meeting in February where we met with Charles and other people from the city, and Charles went through the design, and we all agreed that he was going in the right direction and understand the limits that the technology that he has with the laser cutter is going to give to the images. So a lot of those images look really detailed, but they're going to be a lot simplified for the final version of it, and we totally understand that. And we've approved the images that he's selected. To them have all been gone over very thoroughly with the rest of the committee, and we all approve of what he's included in there. And are working with him to, say, further revise the designs for the final version to get it just the way we want it.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for the effort that went into this, and thank you for your recommendation. Do we have anybody signed up to speak? No. I declare a public hearing to be completed. Any questions of staff? Okay. All right, then you have a recommendation before you to adopt this centennial sculpture as recommended by staff and by the committee. Do I have a motion? Mr. Marcos, move to adopt. And Mr. Woolfley, second. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Well done. And this will be up next week?
Next week.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Gurdon.
Before the end of the year.
All right, well, thank you very much. I know that a lot of effort went into it, and I know I'm not the greatest observer of art, but this I understand, and this I like. Thank you. All right, item next is Police Department update.
Good evening,
Welcome,
Mayor
Chief.
and Council. We are before you again to give you some highlights. A lot of what I'm going to be covering is not year to date, but for the calendar year of 2017. Just a note, there are now, fun fact, there are now more Bowie police patches over in Great Britain than there are UK patches. And that's only because the UK police don't wear patches. But I did have the opportunity to go over at the end of February to, I was one of 8 police executives from the US asked to come sit on a panel for equity in policing. We met with our UK counterparts, and it was a very, very good experience. Got a lot of good ideas, some good feedback. Even though policies and procedures are vastly different, we are still finding common ground in some of the issues affecting communities of color and building legitimacy in the community. So we were able to bring back a lot of ideas from there. It was a very interesting and informative trip. But digging into the packet, we are currently stand at authorized at 65 strength. On paper, we have 64, but that includes 6 in the academy, 3 on light duty, and 1 on administrative leave. So that leaves 54 bodies that we actually have in operation at this point. The call center went operational with dispatch on December 11th. Many thanks to all the city staff that coordinated and helped with us, including the IT folk and everyone else who contributed and put up with us while we figured that out. Over the last 3 months, we've taken 7,113 calls through the call center. We continue our training to get our call takers certified to be dispatchers or up and running as dispatchers. We anticipate training to be completed by mid-July so that everybody in the call center will be a operational dispatcher. We have been preparing for our next 3-year strategic plan, and in focusing on that, we held a series of town hall meetings throughout the city. They were well attended in some spots and not so much in other spots, but we did try to broadcast them live over social media and over the channel. That was a mixed bag depending on the amount of signal that we had. Old Bowie's tough. It's tough to get a signal down there sometimes. But they were very informative. What we wanted to do was lay out our structure, lay out where we were and where we are now and how we got there, and start to get some feedback on the issues that the community is seeing. Because we want to make sure that the issues that we think we're seeing are the same ones that the community is seeing. And we overlap quite a bit. Of course, traffic is a huge concern, and speeding, and you'll see some of that addressed in our packet as we go forward. But the town hall meetings were just the beginning. We also conducted a survey, a resident survey, over a 30-day period, and again, that was social media and internet-based. And we were a little afraid for that because we wanted to make sure we captured as many people as we could. but probably the majority of the folks that filled it out were 60 and above. So we did capture the senior populace, which is, we were a little worried about missing those. We are currently looking at the data, trying to break it down into easily explainable and understandable terms. Once that's complete, we will put that on the website and put that out so everybody can see what the survey results were. We're also working on an annual report, or first annual report. What we were looking at is, we got into budget talks and we started to look at our measurements, our outputs that are listed in the budget. And we all agreed that they didn't really give a good assessment of what exactly we do. It doesn't give a great capture of the proactive stuff that we do and some of the behind the scenes stuff that takes manpower and hours. So we're coming up with an annual report, again, that would dig a little deeper into each division and each grouping to set out goals, to tell what we've accomplished over the past year. And our goal is to have that done by the end of March, although March seems to be slipping away from us quite quickly. We will hope to have that out. Once that's out, we'll put that out over, of course, our various outlets. We also continue to try to use our social media accounts, our Twitter, our Facebook. We don't have an Instagram yet. We're thinking about it, but haven't quite dove into that. And again, the problem with the social media is that it's a 24-hour beast, and you have to feed it. So we want to make sure that whatever social media we do have is active and vibrant. We don't want to have a site just to have a site. So we continue to work on that, make sure that we get information out. Our stats are put out weekly, every Wednesday on Facebook. So you can see what's going on. You don't have to wait for the year end. So that's been an improvement, and we've seen some positive aspects of that. Under police activities, we're going to cover that as we go through the packet because each section has its own page. Some of the community services outreach that we've done, we just had session 4 of the Citizens Academy, just graduated last week. We've gotten into the coffee with a cop business. We're looking at our next location, and we will be putting that out. We, of course, did our shop with a cop last December, which was great. We also got involved with the food pantry for Thanksgiving and sponsoring families that were in need during the Thanksgiving time and delivering some baskets. We just had our last RAD class that finished last week as well. So if anyone hasn't taken the class, I encourage you to, because you don't often get to punch the police chief in the face and not have any repercussions. So please take advantage of that. Some of the crime trends, of course, theft from auto is always a major one. We are seeing the numbers go in the right direction as far as that category goes, but we've seen an increase in retail theft, shoplifting, and that like. We are currently devising a plan to get together with some of the retailers and the business owners and formulate a strategy to share some information, see if we can cut down that number for next year. The Public-Private Liaison Committee for the International Chiefs of Police is currently working on a white paper for retail theft. We're about halfway through, so once that's vetted and approved, hopefully it'll be something that we can apply here. Some interests of notes, we are using Narcan in the department, or naloxone, depending on if it's the brand. We actually have had to use it 3 times in the last 6 months. So we are seeing some of the opioid crisis start to rear its head in Bowie. But we've been working on the training. We're continuing to get more officers trained, continue to get our supply. We've been fortunate that we've been able to find somebody that would supply it to us for free. So we are trying to keep that connection open and vibrant. But as demand rises, supply sometimes starts to fall short. But we are seeing that kind of creep, and we are fortunate enough to have some, every squad has units that do carry it. Moving to the next page, it's just an overall view of calls for service. We responded to 22,534 calls for service. You'll see an asterisk under December's numbers because that's when we got cut loose from the county system. We're actually technically on the county system, but we're partitioned. So it'll be interesting because 2018's numbers will be strictly Bowie numbers. We won't have to filter through county data. It'll be our true numbers. So we'll have a much better idea of the scope next year. If we move on to the crime stats, you've got them from 2007 to 2017. We've had some, we're pretty much flush in some areas. We've dropped in some. The commercial burglaries went way down. Residential burglaries are down. But we've seen some slight bumps in assault reports and theft from auto. Thefts, we've had the jump, and again, that's mostly retail thefts. We did have a spike in robberies, but that was mainly attributed to one certain group, and that's been addressed. Moving violations, we're up from 2016, we've issued 11,959 violations. That includes warnings, equipment repair orders, so it's not straight citations. Because sometimes a warning is just as good as a paying piece of paper. Our photo citations, of course, continue to go down as we expect them to. And if you look on the next page, we broke down the theft stats from different categories: theft from auto, shoplifting, identity theft. Identity theft is up by about 47 cases. But again, the more we are accessible through the internet, the more our identities are at risk. If you look on our website, we do put out information on how to best protect yourself, how to not be a victim of identity theft, and some steps that you should take if you are. Moving on to our criminal investigation section, we changed the way that we presented it this year. We broke it down. We want to be as exact as we can to give a fair accounting of the crime rate and what's going on in the city. So if you look at, we had 374 total property or person crimes. 61 of those were closed, and 313 are open. And that's a vastly different number. But what you have to remember is that this is the total crime number that happened. So that counts that if somebody steals something out of the front seat of a car that was unlocked, there's no witnesses, there's no evidentiary items of value, there's really not a great way to solve that crime, but we still have to account for it. So then if you look at property crimes, the closure rate for just property crimes was about 8%. Our person crimes, total of 66, was closed 32%. So out of the actual cases that had evidentiary value and it was a crime against a person, they were able to close 32% of those. So when we start the total, what's actually been assigned, so what's actually been assigned to the detectives between arrested or the crime was unfounded or closed exceptionally, which means that they decided not to go through with charges for whatever reason, the closure rate's up to 69%. So if we get good leads, we get good information, the detectives are closing 69% of those cases. And again, the second page has a little more calculation processes. Our direct response team, these are the folks that handle citizen complaints. These complaints can range from people hanging out in the corner to suspicious activity to traffic complaints. So this small unit made 635 traffic stops, issued 289 citations, 1,149 warnings. They did 9 DRE evaluations, which are drug recognition evaluations, 55 field observations, 12 arrests. I won't go through the whole litany. But one of the things that we're trying to do, again, is capture what we're doing. So if you look through the pages that say traffic assignments, whenever we get a complaint or a concern for an area with traffic, we log it in, we calculate, we keep track of the hours that we spent and what happened. So I'll just take the top one, which was Stony Brook Drive and 450, that area, for speeding. The DRT spent 18 hours in the area, conducted 92 stops, wrote 115 citations and 135 warnings. So we try to keep that, so we know what's going on, we know how much time we're spending in the area and what the results are. Because if you look at Twisting Lane, we spent 12 hours there and wrote 1 citation. So you can't always measure traffic enforcement purely by citations, but you also have to track what we're actually doing. If you go to the community services overview, there's a lot. So one of the things that we want to work harder at and get better at is our connection to the homeowners associations, or the HOAs. We attended 15 homeowners association meetings. For a city our size and the number of meetings that there are, we need to probably get a little better at that and get a little more in touch with the HOAs, because they're our information source. And one of the things and one of our challenges is staying in touch with the revolving board members and presidents and trying to make sure that we're plugged into those communities. We've done numerous events. I'm not going to go through all of them. One of the things that I'm happy about is that we revitalized our Explorer program. We really dug into the schools and got people excited about it, and we went from 2 Explorers to 28. And these kids are excited, they're ramped up, and it's great to see them involved. It's great to see them engaged, and they're ready to help us out in events, they're ready to help us out any way we need it. And it just really is a fantastic program. There's some upcoming community service events that we have coming up. And I'll try not to belabor that. One of the things that we also put in was the training section, because again, we want to capture what we're doing. Calls for service don't always capture what we're doing and what it entails to run a professional, well-trained police department. So we start to look at what the training section's doing. That comes from attending, 9 recruitment drives, trying to find qualified applicants to come work for us and represent the city. Different trainings that we're doing, vehicle ambushes, tactical firearms, crisis intervention, the list is there. Talk about the current academy. And again, I can't state enough that Prince George's County is an amazing partner for us. We get to put our candidates through some top-notch training in their academy free of charge. The only thing that they ask is that we give them EVOC trainers and firearms trainers. So you cannot beat that deal at all. Plus, it's a great partnership because they're building relationships, again, with the folks that would work District 2. Or their counterparts in the sister agency that will follow them throughout their entire career. And I think that's all I have outside of the packet. Deputy Chief, anything you want to add? Okay, I will take any questions, comments that council may have.
Thank you very much, and before we get into questions from the members here, on behalf of all of us, we'd like to thank you for what you and your staff have done. No matter where I go anymore, I'm always getting a positive story about the police department. Perhaps not so much when the speed camera in front of some of the elementary schools, but you apparently worked hard and earned a good reputation in the community, and I'm very pleased to see you interacting not only with the residential community but the business community as well. Just, as I say, just constantly get good reports. Questions of our guests? Start down the end. Mr. Stev.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief and Deputy Chief, for coming out tonight, and for the officers who joined us. We appreciate it. Just have a couple quick things. First off, the social media game, you guys have done a really good job on Facebook, Twitter, putting stuff out. I really appreciate that. Like you said, when you create it, you actually make use of it, which is awesome, and I appreciate that. I know the IT committee was having a conversation recently, and I think it relates to what our communication staff's doing. I know this is extremely premature, but I'm just curious if we've had a conversation about social media, using that and potential liability when it comes to responding to calls. Are we having issues where people are like hitting you guys up on Facebook saying, "I'm having a problem, help me," and we're having to deal with that?
Not so much. One of the things that you do have to do with your social media, your outlets, is put the disclaimer that says, this is not monitored 24 hours a day. Actually, I have more problem with my email. People emailing me and saying, hey, I got this going on, versus social media. Occasionally, we'll get a message or something asking for advice or what we should do. But we have a couple people monitoring it. While it's not 24 hours, I am pretty obsessive about it. Check the email, check the accounts before I go to bed. So
And the main thing
we
is
haven't
you
had
guys
any
have
serious issues with it.
And you have the appropriate disclaimers and everything else like
Yes.
that. We're all covered on that on the legal end.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's the main thing I wanted to make sure of. I appreciate that. The other thing, you mentioned speeding earlier. Obviously, that continues to be a challenge, and I know you guys are working on it. For the Narcan, it sounds like we haven't had too many cases. From how many do you know off the top of your head we've seen in Bowie so far? I think you said it was like 3 or 4.
You got that? No.
In reference to the Narcan, I just had Sergeant Wall is here in the back room. He's our training coordinator. So he's been working with the Prince George's County Health Department to see about us getting additional training for the officers so we can get more Narcan deployed to the patrol officers. But also, we're seeking that information. From our information, I know we just recently had 2 additional overdoses over the weekend, and that's outside of the 3 deployments that we had with the Narcan where it was successful. We're requesting the information in coordination with the fire department to see how many deployments or overdoses they've responded to within the last 6 months, so we can have a better number of exactly how many overdoses have occurred within the city. So once we get that information, we'll be able to provide it to you.
Yeah, any good data management you guys can do with relations to that would be really helpful. Anything that's opioid related, we really appreciate it. You mentioned the HOA info. I mean, obviously that's a challenge. You guys probably have more updated HOA info than I do. Whenever I mail my HOA, I never even hear back, and it got worse after I got elected, so I don't know what's going on. I'm glad the Explorers program is doing really well. It's a fantastic program. I want to say a big thank you for that. It's a huge community outreach tool. I'm really, really grateful that that's going very well. The only thing I had is just being able to compare some of our data to other communities, like our closure rate and certain other things. I know that the Finance Committee sometimes does comparison data searching for us. Maybe this is something I can take up with Mr. Matthews later. But any way that we can compare some of our data, especially our closure rates and some of our crime rates to other similar communities would be very, very helpful. I know in other areas we've been able to do that, kind of show how we're doing against Bethesda and Gaithersburg and some other places. So I'd be curious if we have that data, and I don't want to create too much homework for you. But in future reports, not necessarily next week, but down the road in future reports, anything you'd have that would help us kind of give us a comparison would be really, really appreciated.
Sure. I
And
will say
beyond
that
that,
we
okay.
ranked second in the last survey that they put out in safest cities in the state, but honestly, that was 2016 data, so we got to wait for the next survey to come out. But we can definitely
I see you got
shop around.
fewer traffic citations this time, so maybe we even went up. Who knows? But I appreciate your time tonight, Chief, and thank you for your continued good work. I know that some of my colleagues are going to bring this up, but I'll go ahead and just throw it out as a closing question for school safety. Obviously, we've had a lot of unfortunate events around the country. I know the Public Safety Committee has been having this conversation. I'm sure you heard about that. And I just want to make sure that we're continuing to follow up with the county and the state. I know the state has made some money available for school safety improvements, but I just want to make sure that's an ongoing discussion. Because it's easy for an event to happen, for everyone to talk about it for a week, and then for it to die down. But I want to make sure that we continue having that conversation. Anything the city can do. I know we have the school safety officers. The county currently reimburses us for that. But just kind of any additional things that we can find in our toolkit that might make parents feel a little bit better, I'd appreciate.
Certainly, and I will say that Officer Stevens is doing a fantastic job in Bowie High. He's very plugged in. The kids trust him. He gets information. Some of it's valid, some of it's not. We are sure to stay plugged in with the county counterparts over there, school security, all the information shared, and I know that we work on concurrent strategies for the school.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief. A couple quick things for you. The first is, we'll start it off as a softball. It's almost a PSA for you. On the campaign trail, there were a number of people that mentioned me suspicious behavior that to them looked like it might be drug transactions and things like that. Could you speak for just a quick second or two on what people should be doing if they come across that sort of behavior that they find suspicious?
Sure, if it's ongoing, and again, this is if it's ongoing but not emergency, you can dial the non-emergency number for us, 240-544-5700. We'll come out and take a look. We like to police by the no harm, no foul. And what do I mean by that? If you find somebody that's on, you think that it's suspicious, let us know. We'll come out and check them out. And no harm, no foul. If they're not up to anything, we just had an interaction, we had a conversation, and they get sent on their way or things get settled. One of the things that's advantageous to that is that if they're not doing anything, but they were thinking about doing something, they know that this is a place to do it because they know that neighbors are watching and folks are watching and folks will call. They don't like, crime does not like light. They don't like bright lights. They don't like to be noticed. So the minute they think somebody's noticing something and you call and we check them out, they're going to find someplace else to be. They're like water. They take the path of least resistance. So don't be afraid to call and reach out. If it's something that you think is more urgent, then definitely use the 911. If I have to say, if you want to err on one side or the other, always err on the side of 911 because it's much better to be wrong and have a presence than guess incorrectly and us not getting there in a fast enough manner. So you can do that if it's a long-term thing or if it's not happening at the moment, but you notice a pattern, you can let us know. There is a email address, cops, COPS, @cityofbowie.org. That goes to the community services. They read it and will send it to whatever division needs to take a look at it.
Excellent, thank you. Next point for you is on the crime statistics. I share Councilman Stev's interest in having some sort of comparison, and I know that they're difficult to come up with given the differing natures of communities across the region, but whatever you can do would be appreciative. Along the same lines, do we have any heat maps or anything along those lines that kind of help focus on what geographic areas we're seeing? And I'm also curious if there's anything in the lines of any patterns that you might see, the type of streets that are having problems, the type of structure. Is it commercial? Is it residential? Is it something in between? On the main highways, or is it that sort of thing that could help us understand a little bit better where some of these things are occurring and what we might be able to do to mitigate them?
We are utilizing crime analysis. One of the things that we think is helping to drive our thefts from auto down at the moment is utilizing that kind of data and deploying units into those areas to your main high traffic areas, your ways in and out of the city, things like that. So we are working on a more sophisticated manner of tracking that, but we are utilizing that data.
Excellent, thank you. One of the things that we heard earlier, we had a constituent in who had concerns that were safety or crime-related in their particular unit. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is what your opinion and the role of the city police force should be when it comes to establishments such as apartments and retail locations and things like that that have a lot of concentrated people or a lot of traffic, that sort of thing, in terms of helping out with some sort of a security plan or a process that ensures that these establishments have security plans, to establish some sort of rapport with the police department to help build up a more safe community in either in the residential or retail?
We work closely with departments when they want to work with us. I know we've had some meetings about how to, we come out and do security surveys for folks. We talk about what is ideal, what they should have. Some are open to it, some are not. I did notice that Sergeant Wall made contact with the young lady after she finished speaking, so we will be following up on that. We've had visits over there a couple times with a couple different management groups, because oftentimes in senior communities, if you don't monitor them properly, people let other people live there. You got, the grandson that might be living there when that's against the rules, and it's really how well that your management company enforces policy. In the end, you ask what our role is, it's just as mediator and suggestion giver. We really can't dictate that they do anything, but we can bring everybody to the table, and sometimes when we're at the table, we carry a little more clout than a resident might.
Okay. Have you ever been engaged in any similar efforts on the front end before the buildings are built, before the shopping centers are laid out, to help perhaps identify areas that could be improved to reduce the risk of crime?
Not to my knowledge. I don't remember being on the front end. Usually we meet with new developments, or we meet with new businesses to, we'll give our 2 cents and get tours of things and give input where asked. But I don't think we've had a spot at the table on the front end before.
Okay. And that may be something I think we ought to be pursuing. We're going to look into that at some point. Let's see what else we got. Obviously interested in school safety, as Councilman Stev mentioned as well. And I think that's it. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief and Deputy Chief, for your presentation tonight. I wanted to follow up on the opioid situation. We do have a resource within the city, and that would be Lee Cromwell. Lee is on the Emergency Preparedness Committee at MML, along with myself, and as you well know, the governor has identified opiate as a significant crisis and wants to take action, and he has charged a number of departments. He has a special person, Clay Stamp, in order to look into that. And we're doing the same thing with MML, and we meet periodically every other month, and this is some of the things that we're talking about on that particular committee, and Lee is there. We also are looking at doing a seminar at MML during the summer convention. One of the things that we've gotten tremendous feedback from a number of the officers that are on the committee that both Lee and I serve on is something that I know I wasn't aware of until we start discussing it late past the latter part of last year, and that is when you have your officers and also your fire department officials, you have to be very careful in administering Narcan, because one of the things, a couple of the officers over, I know on the Eastern Shore, had some violent reactions to it. So we want to make sure that our officers are fully trained in utilizing this particular tool, because it could have some deleterious effect on them if they're not adequately trained in the administration of this particular agent, this drug. Do want to see if any of the police department, you or any one of your selectees are going to be attending the Maryland Municipal League Summer Conference, or maybe we can, if not, maybe we can have Lee bring you back, or along with myself, bring you back some of the discussions that did transpire up at MML, because that is going to be a seminar. We're going to have at least 2 seminars on this at MML, and I think that this would be something that we really need to make sure that you guys have the information. And as I said, you know, like the governor is putting some money in this, and we will be having Clay Stamp is also going to be there, the governor's man, to address this particular issue. So just giving you a heads up on that, and hopefully we can keep the numbers down low, because actually in Prince George's County, the numbers aren't bad in Prince George's County. It's other areas of the state where the numbers are actually atrocious. So keep up the good work, and we appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms.
Thanks
Glass.
for the heads up.
Good evening. First and foremost, Chief Nusky and Deputy Chief Preston, it's wonderful to see you. You guys are doing an absolutely wonderful job down in Annapolis. Everybody speaks your praises, so keep up the good work. I had a couple of questions regarding school safety.
Sure.
First, do we have school resources officers in the elementary and middle schools, or just the high schools?
Just the annex and the high school, the main building. One of the things we're looking at for our 3-year strategic plan is, can we work it that we have a roving one for the middle and elementary school? I don't foresee putting someone at a school, middle school, on a permanent basis, but perhaps we can work it so somebody just is a roving one throughout the day or throughout the week to have a presence.
Okay, and then how often do you all do active shooter training?
We are due for it again. We did the officers train, that's part of their in-service. We're due to make our rounds to the schools again and do a refresher. We went to every school in the city, private and public, a couple of years ago, so it's probably due again. But it's something we try to coordinate so we don't step on the county's toes either. So we'll look at that as well.
And then finally, do you know if any of the schools, or do you participate in active shooter drills with the actual students so they know how to react in an active shooter situation? I think they had, although 17 lives were lost, it could have been more had they not just had an active shooter drill and it was fresh in their minds what they needed to do.
Right. There hasn't been one in Bowie, to my knowledge, for a good 3 to 4 years, and I believe that was Rockledge Elementary that did it. Deputy Chief had just mentioned that DeMatha just did one in Hyattsville on full scale. And again, it's they're cumbersome to do sometimes, but we'll have Officer Stevens reach out to see if there's anything in the works on the county side that we can help to participate in.
Definitely. I think the best way is preparation, and also see something, say something.
Correct.
So if we can just continue to get that out, especially to our youngest children, so it's second nature, you know, it'll hopefully transcend their entire time within the school system. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief, Deputy Chief, thank you for coming here tonight. Thank you for the work that goes into making this presentation. We really appreciate the operational excellence that you have produced, and that speaks well to the leadership. So we thank you for what you do every day. I have said from time to time that when I talk to mayors across the state, I get a wide range of commentary about how they feel about their police departments. And not just a few, but a couple tell me that they stay awake at night worried about the police department. And I tell them that this is one area where I sleep like a baby. Because you guys have earned our trust, and you've earned the trust of the city in it. And like I say, you got it the old-fashioned way. You earned it. So on behalf of all of us, thank you for what you do. Keep at it, and tell your people to keep their head down.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. All right, before we go to a motion, I want to take a second. About a month ago, I gave a State of the City speech. And during that speech, I made a comment about the financial strength and stability of the city. And I made an observation that I'm just so proud of some of my predecessors, some of whom committed the city to a track of financial security and prudence and commitment to a business plan and building that plan and holding to it. And I just want to recognize that one of the guys that did that is sitting right over there, and it's Councilman Jack Jenkins. And I wanted to thank you for all you did on your service here. I want to let you know that he's a former District 2 representative, and that when he left the council, he went to Hollywood. So I don't know if that's an indicator for you or whatever. But Jack, you and I shared some foxholes when times were challenging, and I will tell everybody here I will get in a foxhole with you anytime. You're a good guy, and I always appreciated the fact that we shared a great sense for frugality and squeezing the nickel as much as we could. So I just wanted to acknowledge your presence tonight and thank you for all that you've done. You done? Back in my old neighborhood, they would say, "You're done good." Mr. Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move to a closed session for general provisions, Article 3-305B3, to consider acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters directly related thereto.
Second.
Second by Mr. Marcos, or Dr. Trout. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Good night, everybody. Thank you all.